Hello, and welcome to another monthly installment of Lean Catalyst from Lean Focus. I'm your host, Damon Baker. I'm the CEO of Lean Focused, and it is in this dynamic 1 hour interview series that we bring together like-minded CEOs who've successfully embraced lean thinking to drive exceptional results in their organizations. It's through our captivating conversations that we'll dive into their remarkable achievements, uncovering the strategies, insights, and practical wisdom that have propelled their organizations forward. Each interview features an in-depth interview, which a distinguished CEO who has demonstrated extraordinary leadership in leveraging lean principles. And it's a great opportunity for all of those listening to hear them share their experiences, their strategies, and valuable knowledge with all of us so that we can apply them in our own leadership journeys. Before I introduce you to today's guest, a few housekeeping items. If you are logged in, you should notice in your control panel that there is a Q&A button. We're going to have some time at the end of today's interview, usually about 10 to 15 minutes or so. I will be moderating those questions to today's guests. So as you think about questions based on what you're hearing, or perhaps that triggers a thought in your own lean journey, you can type those questions in the Q&A box, and I will get to those in a first come, first served basis. This presentation will be recorded, and for those of you that are not able to participate live, you'll actually be receiving an email with the link to this presentation where you can watch this on demand at any time of day for whenever you want. You can also find these interviews archived on our Lean Focus website. If you go to the Lean Catalyst drop-down tab, it's in our thought leadership page. And you can also see these interviews on our YouTube channel, which is Lean Focus LLC. So without further ado, it is my distinct honor to introduce you to today's esteemed guest, Jason Kaspar, the CEO of Kaspar Companies. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Damon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a guest. I'm going to share a little bit about your bio, so hopefully I don't embarrass you, and hopefully all this is true. So the eldest fifth generation Kaspar, Jason is the CEO of Kaspar Companies and the co-founder of the Texas Precious Metals, and also the CIO of the Arc Fund Capital Management, which is a global asset management company. Using the money he made from mowing lawns, Jason bought his first stock at the age of 13. As a high school student, he called his broker between class periods to buy and trade stocks. And Jason graduated summa cum laude from Texas A&M University with a bachelor's degree in both finance and accounting. And before settling down in Shiner, Texas, Jason lived in both New York City and Dallas, working as an investment research analyst for Highland Capital Management and a corporate restructuring analyst for FTI Consulting. With a firm foundation in his faith, Jason balances his enthusiasm for business by two-stepping with his fun wife, traveling on the weekends, and spending time with his two little ones. I imagine they're probably not little ones anymore, though.
Yeah, 9 and 6.
9 and 6. Great. Well, it's great to see you again. I think the last time we saw each other, you were schooling me on a playground in Shiner, Texas in the weekly pickup game with the Kaspar Companies team. Is that still a fixture?
Yes, bi-weekly-ish, but yes, we still get out on the court and play basketball. I just had a annual guys weekend, and we pushed it to the limits. Flag football, basketball, pickleball, and wiffle ball. So a full weekend of competition. It was a lot of fun.
So you're like the Bo Jackson now. You're like Bo knows everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, my body is majorly sore, I think, along with everybody else's. We push it and then we regret it. But
so I want to get into the history of Kaspar Companies right out of the gate. I think your story, your family's story about the legacy and the company that you all have created, I think it's just one of the greatest untold stories in business, quite frankly, in the U.S. And when I talk to people about it, a lot of people haven't heard of you. So this is a great situation for you just to describe the history in it. And it's not a short history; it's a very long history with Kaspar Companies. So would you mind indulging the audience and sharing a little bit about it?
Sure, yeah, happy to. And I'll try to keep it somewhat concise. But yeah, my great great grandfather came over to Texas from Switzerland. He was a Lutheran missionary in the 1860s, 1870s, and his son in the area and became a farmer, and but he was also a tinker. And so when Bob wire came to Texas in the late 1800s, the smooth wire that was used by the ranchers became major piles of scrap. And my great grandfather took that scrap and started making wire baskets out of the smooth metal for horse muzzles and corn husk baskets. And the farmer, local farmers would say, "Hey, that's a pretty cool basket. I'll give you $1 for it." And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure. I'll just make another one." And pretty soon he was on his covered wagon, traveling in the area, avoiding Indian attacks, and selling these baskets for $1 a piece, and then incorporated in 1898. So we just completed our 125th year anniversary just last year, and so from that developed a wire manufacturing business. And the first shopping cart ever invented in the United States actually came out of our plant in Shiner, Texas. And Shiner is south of Austin, between San Antonio and Houston. We always say we're in the middle of everywhere, middle of nowhere, about an hour and a half from each metropolis. A very rural county, one stoplight town. But from that, the basket, and then the grocery cart, and then World War II, when there was shortages of steel, or that you could only be making for military to support the war, started making ammo cases, and was able to survive that period in the Depression. And so the first generation and then the second generation continued to grow that business, and we acquired in the 1950s a coin mechanism for, we called them show racks, but newspaper vending machines. So you put in $1.50, get out a Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Houston Chronicle, and we made 90% of those newspaper vending machines ever made in North America. And that's what really launched us from a custom wire shop to a sort of sole source product. We had the patent on the coin mechanism. But that went the way of the dodo bird, right, with the internet. And we made the last one of those in 2015. And through our values of family stewardship, and the third one that you don't necessarily hear a lot on the corporate side of versatility, we continue to sort of reinvent ourselves. And, being in business, 125 years, now 126 years, if you're not reinventing yourself, you cease to be relevant in the marketplace. And so today we have 5 platforms. We have Kaspar Outdoors, which is a hunting rifle, carbon fiber stocks, actions. We have Texas Precious Metals, which is a gold and silver company. We have Bedrock Truck Beds, which is a utility truck bed company. And then a year ago, we bought Circle Y Saddles, which is the largest Western saddle manufacturer in the United States. And then we have a 5th platform that's administrative services and real estate development, which is more inward looking. So, we have now, like I said, through the history, I've been continuing able to sort of reinvent who we are and to be, maintain relevancy even as things go in and out of style, like the show rack business, the newspaper vending business that, no longer is relevant or no longer exist. And always been headquartered in Shiner, but we've expanded our footprint now, where we have 40,000 square feet in Bryan College Station. We have over 100,000 square feet down in Beeville, Texas, which is near Corpus Christi. And then we have a satellite office in Idaho, actually, sort of randomly, and continuing to adjust, with the way the world adjusts, so that, we can, like I said, stay relevant. So that's history in a nutshell. And obviously, like you said, there's, I could probably spend the entire podcast talking through that journey and the transfer of ownership from generation to generation. But we're still 100% family owned, going back to, like I said, my great grandfather.
That's an amazing story. How old were you when you started working in the business? Like off the payroll versus on the payroll?
Yeah. So my first official job, going back to sort of the real estate, and we have some ranch land and that kind of stuff, was hauling hay at age 13, 14 years old. My first factory job, and I think rules have changed a little bit since then, but I was 16, and I'm convinced my dad did this all on purpose. But I was we made these grill guards for trucks, and I was literally outside the door of the AC manufacturing building, and in South Texas, July, August, June, 98 degrees,
Yeah, it's
95 degrees,
hot.
102 degrees, and in this sort of closed-in area, no breeze at all. And I was responsible for grinding on these burrs and welding burrs off these grill guards. And not only did I think lose 5 pounds of water weight literally every single day, but by the end of the day, my skin was a completely different color as well. So
Yeah.
um, that was an unbelievable learning experience. And then also, I was like, okay, education for me, at least in my my ambitions, are is highly important to take that seriously. And then, I did some stuff in college during summers and things. But as you mentioned, I left and went to New York, Wall Street, and then Dallas for several years before coming back to the family business.
Did you always know you'd come back to the family business, Jason? Because some people that I meet sort of have this internal
Yeah.
dilemma, like, do I want to work in the family business or do I want to create my own identity?
Yeah, no, great question. And I had zero pressure from parents, from grandparents, and in fact, I would say the fourth generation. So again, I'm fifth. My parents, my uncles almost pushed me out because I think the fourth generation felt a lot of pressure to come back. And for me, that they didn't want to give that same pressure. And I left. My goal, even from high school, was to get to Wall Street. But when I graduated high school, I told my parents, they're like, "Oh, congratulations, son. We're so proud of you." All that stuff. I was like, "No, I'll be back." And they kind of looked at me a little weird, whatever. Went to A&M, graduated, like you mentioned, top of my class, headed to Wall Street, got the job. And again, I remember very specifically a conversation with my mom congratulating me and all that kind of stuff, and go see the world. And, we hope to see you on Christmas, Thanksgiving, that sort of thing. I was like, "No, I'm coming back. Do you not want me back? Like, I'm coming back." And I had a vision for what even Casper companies could be, even so much more than it was, and life's journeys and how that vision would play out. But I could close my eyes and see in my mind's eye what I wanted to do with what I saw was sort of a canvas where a painting was started, but there was still so much more to paint.
Yeah.
If it makes any sense. And so, no, I always wanted to come back, and didn't know when or how or in what avenue, but that was a very much defined goal for me.
Yeah. That's amazing. Um, when did you first get exposed to lean in any capacity? Like, you heard those words, like, talk to me about what that experience was like,
Yeah.
what you learned from it. So
Yeah. So like I said, I was a finance guy, not a manufacturing guy, not even necessarily a business operator per se. And when I came back, and this even gets a little bit into some of the family and Casper companies history and all that sort of thing. The third generation, my grandfather did an unbelievable job of building an unbelievable foundation of what Casper Companies was and represented. And he was in the office until the day before he passed away. He passed away at the age of 89 years old, and the day
wow.
before he still was at work. And that those last 10 years, not because of anything of his own fault, right? As you just get older, and as things start to, mentally slow down a little bit, I call it sort of the lost decade of Casper companies in our history, from 2007 to 2017. If you think about how much the world changed from social media interaction, and the
Yeah.
way you connected with customers, and technological development, all those sort of things, right? And so during that time frame, we started losing just small pieces of competitiveness that you couldn't see, right? He set the company up so well, it was making money, it was still cash flowing, it was still progressing, but every day on a micro basis, we were losing a little bit of a competitiveness.
Yeah. Kind of chipping
And
away.
and so he passed away, and I became CEO of Casper Companies, and started taking stock in some different things. It's like, oh, we want to advance, and not knowing what I didn't know on so many different levels. And
Like, hold on. How ready were you for that? Like, were you just like, oh shit, or were you
yeah,
like,
uh, in my
finally I
mind,
can,
yeah,
in my mind's eye, I've got this vision, I can start to put the pieces down. Because
yeah.
I mean, you're not, you're a young guy, you know.
Yeah, I was probably right at 30, 31 at the time, something like that. Yeah, so in my so not knowing what you don't know, you're supremely confident.
Yeah,
And in some ways, I'm thankful of what I did not know, because I don't know I don't know if my self-confidence would have been able to propel me and the company the way it happened if I knew all the gaps that I did not know.
yeah.
So looking back, I was like, what in the world? That was insane. In the moment, I was like, okay, we got this. And then 6 months later, I was like, oh my goodness,
What I sign up for.
what did I sign up for, right? And so which leads back to the lean portion. Within just a few months, it was nothing because of just coincidentally, but our most profitable business was all of a sudden losing money. At
What
a
business was that?
that was Ranchan,
Okay.
which was a
So
grill guard
so
business on.
Ranchan, for those people that don't know, like you see a big truck out in West Texas, right? Like there's a function to this. It's not just aesthetics. You need what people refer to as a brush guard. And so
Mhm.
like explain to people like what a brush guard is.
Yeah, so it's a grill guard or full bumper replacement and back bumper that goes on the front of a pickup truck, from an F-150, up to much bigger vehicles, F-350s, and then by the end we're making them from Suburbans and other SUVs. But collision wise, we used to get testimonials literally monthly, where it transfers the energy down the chassis of the truck versus into the cabin. So the first, it came a product necessary in Texas and the hill country, sort of where it was invented, because of deer collisions, constantly hitting
Yeah,
deer and that sort of thing. And then it got put on for ranch trucks, as you mentioned, brush guards, going through brush, or just bumping a gate. I need to open my gate for cattle and I don't want to get out of the truck, and
yeah,
that kind of stuff. And then got put on utility vehicles for oil industry and all that kind of stuff, and became a national product. We actually bought the company in 2001, and it was 3 million in revenue, like this itty
yeah.
bitty sort of niche product that we were able to sort of blow up and grow nationally.
Just to take a detour, I mean, I'm just so excited about all your businesses, but like this one particular, I remember you guys showed me a video and about the guy who went off the bridge,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, so
And
yeah, driving over a freeway, and he lost his wheel somehow. The axle broke or something, and went over a causeway, straight down. And as he tells the story, he had that sort of like, life flash in front of your
yeah,
eyes.
I'm done.
Very, everything just really slows down. And he's like, God, here I come. And he hit directly, face down, airbags deploy everything, and it falls over, and the inside is a little bit smoky, and he starts feeling around. He's like, I'm still alive. Kicks out the window, climbs out, and he calls 911 himself, because he went over a causeway. There was nobody below,
Yeah,
and vehicles were just still flying down. And the cops came, and he was a contractor and was starting to pick up his tools and stuff, and drew guns on him and said,
yeah.
get away from the truck. Thought he was trying to steal. And he's like, no, 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 I
Oh
was in the truck.
gosh.
And the officer was like, no, no, anybody in that truck could not have survived. He's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm in the truck. So yeah, unbelievable product, and just the durability, and like I said, we got testimonials similar to that, all the time.
So that
It,
business is struggling financially.
it was our biggest
That
business,
yeah,
most profitable, and started struggling financially. And we had hired an individual who was a vice president of manufacturing for another company, who said he was lean, and we at the time I knew nothing about lean, not the philosophy, not the thinking. I was a finance guy, right? And so we had
yeah.
hired him, and he started changing things around in our
So how
production.
did you know that you needed that in the first
I
place
mean,
when you
we
hired
didn't.
this guy?
No, we didn't. I mean, I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
We were just trying to upgrade our bench, and we were having production issues because we were growing so fast.
Yeah,
And it was like, oh, lean, that's a good word. And
yeah.
uh,
And you
uh,
came from a bigger company, I assume, and
yeah, a
yeah,
Fortune 500 company.
right.
Uh, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do in manufacturing. You're supposed to be lean, and lean's a manufacturing thing. That's what we thought now. That's not what we think today. And so, it's like, yeah, let's hire him. and our production, instead of, dropped like 30% in three months. And
Ouch.
I'll jump ahead of the story a little bit. It's because you started changing around the factory without taking into account changeover times.
Yeah.
And so trying to go to sort of a one piece, or even a smaller, less batch. So taking the right steps, but not understanding the application within the manufacturing.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, production was going down massively, and I was like, we're going to be in serious trouble. I know nothing about manufacturing, but I can see the crisis. And so I moved my office from an administrative building and the CEO office to the factory floor. It was that sort of bad of a situation.
That's what great great grandfather would have done. It probably didn't have an office.
Yeah, exactly.
uh,
And just started asking questions. And when I try to learn something, I'm not an audio learner, I'm a very visual learner. And so I just
yeah.
start pouring through books. And I read a Six Sigma book, and I was like, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then I read, several others, and then I read The Lean Turnaround by Art Byrne.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the lights and the light bulbs, everything just connected. And for me, as far as like as a philosophy, as a thinking, and we didn't know what we were doing, but we started taking steps. And I talk from a life journey perspective. I say we were a toddler, where we would stand up, take a few steps, and boom, fall flat on our face, and it would hurt, and we'd cry for a couple minutes, and then stand up again, and toddle forward, and then boom, land on our face again. But we were able, in about within a month or two, I realized it was all about changeover. That was our issue. And was able to get the manufacturing back in line to where we were making money again, where the existential crisis went away. But instead of, it's like, oh, it's a manufacturing thing, the more and more I dug into it, I realized it was a much more business system
Yeah.
thinking thing, and started
Scheduling, orders, like all that.
all that stuff. And even in our administrative services business, and in accounting, and the way, even marketing, and all of every part of the business. And again, it was a journey. Like today, I'd probably say we're more like a tween or an adolescent. Still a long way to go, but we just kept pushing forward even when we were falling on our face. And then went from ranch hand to our other subsidiaries, and then from our other subsidiaries creating an actual defined business system that connected everything together. And it was 4 years of really sort of difficult treading, as far as just changing the thinking of the organizations. But when you're a private company, and our timeline is, I'm thinking generations that I will never meet, in the
Oh.
future. We have that opportunity. So that was my first exposure. Long answer to your question.
It's just great. And I think about one of the first things you said in the history of the company is was it your great great grandfather or your great 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 grandfather? Was it three?
The three was the Lutheran missionary who came over. The
Yeah.
great was the farmer. Yeah.
So he had like this entrepreneurial spirit where he took something that was being thrown away, right? And
Yeah.
you think about one of the principles in lean, we talk about mind versus wallet, like
Hmm.
creativity over capital. And it was almost like his own AI
Yeah.
boom. In a sense, it's like the conversion from smooth wire to prickly wire created
Yeah.
this
Bob Wire. Yeah.
tremendous opportunity for him. And he got after it with grit. And I think that, to me, is, if it's not documented as a value for Kaspar companies, it's certainly something that you guys believe in, because I think you guys just have a gritty way of
Yeah.
getting after things. You don't sit in a boardroom and talk about it for weeks and months and put PowerPoints together. You guys
Yeah.
do stuff, and I think you know
Yeah. Well, I think it ties to the value. We talk about it all the time. Like I said, family stewardship, and that third one, versatility, which is where it comes out in, right? That and there's always, if it's a value, that means you're willing to sacrifice for it. And and that means you can be too versatile, right? But because you should be a little bit stronger, or stand a little bit, more so, and we're willing to change so quickly, that of course it can have a negative, but the net of it is extremely positive for us. And whether it means changing around the factory, or going all the way back to, like you're talking about, my great great grandfather taking that metal and changing it around, or things that we did during COVID, or just tweaking our business. How we even got into the bedrock business to begin with was an insight on how to make a truck bed differently and more modular that added value to the customer, sort of the back to that basic tenet of lean, if you will. So yeah, fully agree.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was 4 years of you know, being a toddler and falling down and getting
Yep.
up and crying and these kinds of things before you guys really said, this is something that is this going to be part of how we run a business. It took 4 years to get to that point.
No, no, I don't think no. Within, I would say, when I read the book, The Lean Turnaround, I knew that was the way we were going to run the business.
Yeah.
It was 4 years of learning on the job to become more efficient at running the business that way.
Yeah.
But there was never, once the light bulb went on for me, and I knew I wasn't leaving Shiner. Who knows what the future is, but my hope is that I die in Shiner. Hopefully many years from now, but that I wasn't leaving, and that this was the answer for the future of Kaspar companies. And so
Yeah.
there was never ever any wavering that we're going to move away from this. It was just that it took that long to be. I won't. And again, we're tweens, adolescents. Like, we're not where we could get proficient at it enough to be inward, and it could be self-replicating without me being out there literally with brute force pushing it forward, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. Um, I'd like to hypothesize for a second why that book had an impact on you. You had a finance background, right? So you went to Wall Street and you're interested in finance, and you started. You talked about grinding the welts. So
Yeah.
to me, what Art's book does extraordinarily well, and there's very few that do this, is connecting the manufacturing side to the financial side
Yes.
with P&L impact, working capital impact, tying it to a tool like setup reduction, right? So like most people think, oh, let's go do setup reduction because setup reduction is a tool. We need to do it. And in order to be lean, we have to do setup reduction. Uh, Art talks a lot about setup reduction's impact on Wire Mold's free cash flow improvement, and
Right.
how that free cash flow improvement enabled him to invest in acquisitions,
Right.
right?
100%.
So as the finance guy, were you going, this
Yes.
makes sense?
Yeah. And I'll add one. So 100%. And that's exactly right. And why I gravitated to it. Spoke my language while speaking into a language that I was trying to learn. And then the second thing that I would add to that, and the more, once it mentions it in the book, I would say it's not necessarily the as highlighted, but once I latched onto the book, I studied more and more, is the holistic approach to it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And
and
it's holistic, and it's pragmatic, and it's things you can do like immediately, right? It's not theoretical. It's not. You talked about how you read the Six Sigma book, and you're like, no, not for me. But I think the pragmatism and the just do it sort of style and tone that he talks about lean transformation probably resonated too. Is that a fair statement?
very fair statement. Experiment fast, and if it fails, move on to the next experiment, sort of thing, right? And then, our business is not Six Sigma obviously applies and can apply well to certain areas, but we weren't high technological businesses, right?
Yeah,
We're
and it's not a culture either, right? Six
right.
Sigma is not a culture; it's a set of tools.
Right, exactly. And so, even Art Burnt in the book, it talks about how they changed the accounting, again, my language, to change how they eliminated many transactions, and then allowed the financials to get released so much quicker within Wire Mold, the business that he
Yeah,
was turning around, right? And so for us, within 18 months, 2 years, we started doing Kaizens and accounting, and and Casper companies, as I've described, it's a pretty dang complex legal structure and accounting structure with all these subsidiaries at all these different places, right?
yeah,
And it took us about 15 to 17 business days, so not counting weekends, but business days to close the book. And
yeah,
now we're doing it in 3 days,
yeah,
consistent. And again, Art Byrne was the one who sort of showed the holistic approach for me, that no, it's not just a manufacturing thing. It's a way of thinking, and it can apply to every part of the business. And from a CEO's perspective, doing a rallying cry for the business, for our town, for the next 30 years, right? I could get everybody on board in the same messaging versus, oh, that's a manufacturing thing in the paint department. And oh, that's a, 6S. Oh, that just applies to, or 5S. That just applies to, the tooling room. No, it's holistic, whether we're talking marketing, sales, accounting, how we purchasing, procurement, order entry, the whole thing, right? And so it could become something that I could rally everybody around versus just a department.
Yeah. So if I were to come down there today, and I don't know how it's been, gosh, it's been probably over 6 years since I've been there, I think.
Yeah, I think 2019, maybe.
2019, 5 years.
Yeah,
What would we see today in terms of the state of maturity of Casper companies, in terms of the Casper business system and
yeah.
its maturity?
So first of all, and this was a huge sort of moving into a formal business system, and I've actually got it here. So Toyota production systems, Danaher business systems. We've now created our
Yeah, that was great.
yeah.
How do I get a copy of that?
Man, I might be able to send you one with some disclosure paper signing,
Yeah,
but
no worries.
um, but no, it's a very defined playbook now. That again, so the acronym for our playbook is skills, safety, Kaizen, investing, lean daily management, leadership, and SDP or strategic deployment, right?
Okay.
And each one of those has a module, and each of those modules changes or grows as we mature sort of every year. Again, very similar to how Danaher has set it up. And so if you came down today, you would see visualization that ties back to this playbook in every single form of the skills aspect, right?
And all the
And
businesses that Casper has within the portfolio.
correct. And yes,
Yeah.
all the businesses that Kaspar has within the portfolio. And then we can talk about, we just acquired similar to Art Burn, the saddle company. We can talk about how we overlaid that in a bit. But those visual aspects from a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and an annual basis drive the system that then drive behavior, right?
Mhm.
And so for instance, today I'm in actually Bryan College Station with our outdoors business. It's MOR day, monthly operating review, and within Kaizen, we have part of that module, waste walk videos, and those videos get one a month. That's by every single area or department, depending on how it's broken down. And then all of those get reviewed by management of the subsidiary at MOR. And so today I saw 6 of them, one of this one particular subsidiary. And we voted on one of the 6 that will go to the KPO office, Kaizen Promotion Office. And they get them from all the subsidiaries. And then every quarter, they pick 2 of what they feel like is the best that gets played in front of everybody at our quarterly town hall, all in person or remote, but everyone's involved. And then they watch those 2, and then there's live voting on who wins the Kaizen of the quarter, and then excuse me, not Kaizen of the quarter, the waste walk of the quarter. And then there's a big trophy and a big deal's made out of it, right? And that is a system that drives the behavior of continuous improvement in every single department and being able to have fun with it. Some of the videos are really creative and cute. We try to keep them only 1 to 2 minutes so it doesn't become bureaucratic, but that sort of reinforces itself. Same thing. Now we have an app on safety observation cards, and we track every single employee that gets a KPI that gets sent out weekly from the board all the way down to the managers. That gets shows who has submitted a safety observation card and a grade score for the week of every subsidiary. And so, I mean, again, I could talk even about this for an hour, but that's what you would see now compared to when 2019. In 2019, we were thinking holistically, but we hadn't tied it all together as a system that sort of self propels, if you will.
Yeah. So imagine Jason. So there's a CEO listening to this going, yeah, but Jason's in the weeds. Jason's in the details. Like, I run a bigger business, and these things that he's describing that make up sort of the success factors of KBS would not apply in fill in the blank XYZ company, publicly traded company. How do you answer that objection?
Yep. So I would say I would actually inverse the question and say that most of what I read early on was lean all in the big companies, and we had to continue to experiment to figure out how to make it work for our subsidiaries. We're about 500 or so employees, and that was the all the information out there is much more for how do you apply this to, again, wire mold and Danaher and Toyota and
Yeah.
General Electric and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the resources there and the ability to change the thinking, I would say even quicker and faster from being able to tap into outside resources and talent acquisition were tools that or not tools were things that you could pull the lever on that was much more muted and available for us, if you will. And so again, I would go back to everything is about the thinking and not the tool itself. And so if you get the thinking right, it doesn't matter whether you're a startup or whether you're a 500 employee company like ourselves or whether you have 30,000 employees. It's the thinking that then drives the action and the tools that can bolt onto the thinking. So, whether we are, and we've started up companies since we started Lean, like from scratch, zero in revenue. The application there versus acquiring companies. We acquired a company with 200 employees versus if we were to acquire a company with 5,000 employees. The application may be a little bit different, but the approach and the thinking and the tools, would all be the same essentially.
Yeah. How do you ensure, Jason, I'm listening to you talk and I can tell you're passionate, you're enthusiastic about that. Like I can see your eyes gleaming when you talk about these stories and sort of the improvements that you made. How do you ensure that that same passion and energy is in your leadership team and then, of course, in their direct reports?
Yeah,
Because people need to find their own religion, so to speak. It's kind of like lean's got to be pull versus push. And if it feels like people are going to the dentist and getting a root canal every day,
yeah.
you won't have that culture that you're trying to build.
Yeah. And I would say that was the hardest part in the first few years, both in my own ignorance, like, I'll carry a lot of blame for that as well. But then also, like I said, the thinking, my own thinking or others thinking, it had to change. And there was this tipping point that occurred that now today self-propagates, right? Where somebody coming in from the outside, they immediately go into an immersion program with our business systems. It's about a week long, and it's like a fish in water. You don't know anything different. But I think to get to the heart of your question, sort of early on, when we're first starting on that journey, one, it's like you said, that passion, leadership. I would say in the United States, maybe it's the world. There is a gulf in leadership just overall, business wise to political. That if you have a leader who is passionate, people are wanting and desiring that religion, as you call it, to follow. But then it's celebrating those wins along the way, and then it's the third one I would say is illustrating and highlighting when you're celebrating those wins how it benefits the employee. So I'll go back to even the accounting one, right? Going from 17 days to 3 days. Well, now think about how all the other things that you can be doing now to help the business
Yeah.
that are now more interesting versus just trying to
Yeah.
close the books, right?
Yeah. Spend
Or
less time reporting the news and more time making the news.
right, right. And now a lot of our finance team can be yeah, once a quarter or whatever in kaizens, outside the business that they never would otherwise be able to touch or be involved with. Or
Wait, your finance people are on Kaizen events, Jason?
oh yes, yeah, that's a big deal for us. And I would say our finance team, our accounting team, right? They have unbelievable. They see the numbers every day and have insights that others who aren't connected wouldn't otherwise have. So combining on our kaizens, people from the factory floor, with someone from the accounting finance department, it's a 1+1 = 3
Yeah.
scenario when that happens for sure. But then, then I was going to say showing the people on the factory floor too. Again, well, this changeover took XYZ, or you were constantly waiting for a part, and now look at your productivity number, celebrating that, and then tying all of that, we adopted Wire Molds and Art Burns profit sharing program in some form or fashion. And again, it was lumpy at first, but constantly being able to point that as well. People drank the Kool-Aid, if you will. And
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. Can you just highlight for folks and what you're willing to share, obviously for confidentiality reasons, sort of how that's structured? Because I think with family businesses in particular, your passion, your energy, like your last name is Kaspar. So like, yeah, you should wake up and care about this and be committed. But then you got other people who are just employees of Kaspar,
yeah,
and they get a paycheck obviously in return for the work that they do. But how do you create more skin in the game, more engagement in this model? And I think you've eaten your own cooking there as well. If you
yeah.
could share a little bit about that.
Sure. So we had a 401k matching program, and we started, and when I first sort of took over, started doing research as far as how much money was going. It was completely arbitrary with a match year over year, like there was no system to it. And I started looking in, and a large percentage of our employees were not involved in the match also, right? A
Yeah,
blue collar individual, comes in and, we tell them about the 401k program or whatnot. I was like, no, I want that paycheck. And so I felt like there wasn't really benefiting everybody. And again, I read the book Lean Turnaround, and Art talked about the profit sharing program, and I did some more research on it. We tweaked it a little bit, and we instituted that, tying it to this lean initiative and lean push, where we sell the 401k program, got rid of the match, but the profit sharing program you can use it as a match to tax defer going into the 401k program. But now up to 10% of profits go up to 10% of your salary can go up back to you as an employee. So if you're someone who makes $40,000, you can get up to $4,000, which is sizable, right? For a profit sharing program. If you make $100,000, you can get up to $10,000 back. And it's on straight wages, so not overtime. And it is prorated based upon how much you make. So it's based upon the value that you're distributing to the company. It's equitable on the way up. And at the beginning, like I told you, we had just gone into making losing money, and it was 3 or 4 years of like struggling. Some quarters we'd have 5% of people's compensation being back in profit sharing, and all of a sudden we'd hit a quarter where it was 1% or 0%.
yeah,
And in 2000, and that was difficult, but continuing to highlight this Kaizen and what it's done and why we changed the factory and we're spending extra money here. And today we are consistently at maxing out a full 10% of people's profit sharing or compensation is now in profit sharing. And then, like I said, they can decide to put it in the 401k, or they can take the check and go home. And I've heard stories of employees who, because of profit sharing, they were going to go to Galveston, and they had an extra few $1,000s. They decided to go to Disney. I had an employee tell me that, a little bit bigger vacation, right? And so being able to tie the effort and the journey that we're on, and it becomes, again, early on, there's doubters, and so it's the passion that has to overcome that early on.
yeah.
But then it self propagates, and just the internal excitement and like, yeah, this is who we are and this is what we do. And so now, like I said, it even reached a tipping point now where you hire a new employee and they don't know anything different otherwise, right? So
Oh.
it's that first part to get that in it going, and tying that back to the benefit to the employee was definitely a key to it.
Yeah, and I think it helps to establish an ownership mindset with folks that wouldn't feel like any extra effort in supporting and or leading slash participating in KBS would result or manifest itself in any sort of benefit for them.
Right.
And you do a really good job of tying, we did this KBS activity, it drove this financial outcome, therefore we should all share in the rewards of those efforts. And it just is like a fulfilling self
Yes.
reward loop, if you will. So I want to shift gears and talk talent for a second, and sort of kind of couple dimensions. So you're in Shiner, Texas.
Mhm.
How hard is it to get talent into Shiner, Texas?
Again, back to saying talking to the CEO of a bigger company, that was by far the most difficult aspect of the journey. And the If you're, a big company operating in Houston or Dallas or San Francisco or, Atlanta, right? In many ways you can go faster because that constraint wasn't there. Uh, I got blessed with a unbelievable hire from a gentleman named Peter Robinson, who was my COO, who could help be the driver of the business system and the thinking. But outside of that, I mean, and I can't say outside of that, like that was an absolute critical hire we made in 2019, and really helped on the tipping point. But outside of that, and Art Byrne talks a lot about it in his book as well, the internal training of the employees. And so we kept hiring people from the outside, and whether it be culturally or they'd become from a big company conglomerate. We even hired some Danaher folks, and just really struggled with, again, the application different for our size business of 500 employees
Yeah.
than a big conglomerate. And we churned through a bunch of them. And finally, I wouldn't say we've given up. We still hire, try to outside, but convincing someone to come to a one stoplight town, while I love it and want to die there, right? I understand it's not for everybody, from a spouse perspective or from a kid, their kid's interest perspective or whatnot. And so we have spent a very large amount of time, both within KBS, the business system, building out Kaspar University and building out trainings. And I talked about the immersion program when we do hire individuals, uh, to where we are generating that talent internally. And because we had
Yeah.
staying power, being a private company, that we could do it for several years, right? Individuals who may not have gotten it initially, 4 or 5 years later, I've now become leaders, and the thinking has changed and help us propagate it. So Art Byrne always talked about how he never wanted to hire engineers from other companies because they were already ruined. He always wanted to hire undergrad engineers, but that again takes time, right? That
Yeah.
undergrad
Soft,
engineer,
malleable brains.
right, exactly, right. They may be very smart individuals, but it's going to take them 6 months to find the bathroom, right? As far as just how things work, before they're really contributing value. And so we've made an emphasis in hiring younger, and a real emphasis in the internal training, to be able to self propagate that. And if I lived in Houston, or if our business was in Houston, it may have been faster, it may have been different, but because we had to do it, I would say, the hard way in some ways. I believe that our foundation and our people are if I got incapacitated or disappeared, I'm confident that the system, I can
The
come
show
back
would
in
go
6
on.
months, will be, yeah, continuing to improve, if you will. So
Yeah. I think almost out of necessity, right? You had to create a high engagement culture, continuous improvement culture, because of your geographic location, to
mhm.
create this distinct competitive advantage against the companies that you compete with in Shiner, which,
Mhm.
there isn't like this huge 80-20 of big companies in Shiner. It's like Shiner beer, and then there
Yeah,
isn't a whole lot.
yeah. There's three of us, and that employ like all the other towns around us too, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, the brewery, Shiner Beer, Bedecker Plastics, which is several hundred employees, and then our company. So yeah.
Yeah. So, you just got this value proposition, which, the culture, the development, the training opportunities, the opportunities for growth, and these kinds of things. So, one quick question, then we'll get to some questions from the group here that's listening, and there's a lot of questions, so we'll try to get through these. So this is a reminder for folks that have a question for Jason. Please type that in the Q&A box, and I'll moderate. So a quick question. I think you sort of alluded to it, but I want to hear it. So, um, did you have to make some talent changes on the journey? Like, people just didn't make the trip across the desert to the promised land that you're trying to take Casper companies to, and they didn't fit the culture that you're trying to build, whether that was outside hires or even people who were already Casper
Yeah.
employees that started the journey and maybe didn't make it.
Yeah, so on the outside hires, yes. We had to, we had to separate ways on a few individuals where, you come in, you have this pedigree, resume, right? We're paying you a lot of money, especially for local areas, for the local area, and you're just not delivering the value that we expect, and slash you're really struggling with the thinking or culture, or turning people off of the journey. That was probably the other big thing, where it's like, we're on this lean journey, and your application or where you learned it or whatnot is really turning the minds that are trying to decide whether to get on board or not board. You're turning them off, not on. And so we definitely had to make some changes there internally from the beginning. I don't think we eliminated anybody for thinking. There were several people who left, who said this wasn't for me, and who didn't want to change, or they self worked themselves out, and that was extremely painful, because again, I mean, small town, if
Yeah,
you
you lost a lot of knowledge and
you lose a manager, and it's not like, oh, I can replace them in 2 or 3 days, right? But for the most part, I would say some longer than others. But as long as we didn't have anybody who's like, no, this is absolutely the worst thing, and I'm going to try to be a terrorist and undermine it the entire time. Uh, the current employees that when we started this journey, like I said, some were on the fence and weren't proactively moving forward, but any that were reactively, they just left and found other opportunities, which was great. So
uh, thank you for that. Okay, shifting gears to some questions from the participants that are listening here. You mentioned your acquisition earlier. That sounds like you said it's a saddle business.
yeah, so a company's called Circle Y. They're the largest Western saddle manufacturer in the United States, so versus Eastern or English style. So roping saddles, trail riding saddles, ranch saddles, show saddles. I didn't know there was all these type of saddles before we bought the company. But it has about when we bought it, it was just shy of 200 employees. And there's some unique circumstances as far as creating the opportunity to buy it. But and this is again back to the vision of what I had of Kaspar Companies going back to when I was in college and high school. It was getting our foundation in place, and then building the framework around it. And now we're adding to the house. And this is one that of acquisition that I hope that we start doing, every other year, or eventually every year, maybe more than one a year.
Yeah.
And taking our Casper business systems.
Yeah, that's what this question is related to, is how have you thoughtfully thought about bringing KBS to the new acquisition in a systematic, process driven kind of way?
Yeah. So the first thing that we did was meet with all of management, described, who we are and how we do business. Like, it's the Casper Business Systems. This module, gave sort of a 30, 45-minute overview of what that was, and said, if you get on board with this, everyone will have a job, because we didn't have people to come in to take their jobs. We wanted them, but this is the way we're doing business. And so if you can get on board with this, you'll have a job, and we will walk and teach you along the way. And so the first thing we did when the first 3 months after that overview, we met, did a class of about 4 hours for all the upper level leadership of each module, and why we're doing it. And then, as part of the 4 hour class, for instance, the waste walk video. Well, once we got to that section, well, then we would exit the classroom and go out and do one with them, and show it to them, right? And so really showed the thinking and tied the benefit of how that we would do it. The benefit of if we do this, how it ties to the benefit for them. And within the first maybe I would say 3 months, maybe it was the fourth month, we did a massive super Kaizen with over 30 participants. Over 20 of them were from the company that we acquired, so almost 10% of their workforce. And then we brought in several from our other subsidiaries who have been on this journey. And at the time, they were using the lead time on, or the cycle time on a saddle, was anywhere between 21 and 45 days. So you can imagine the whip
Yeah.
that was in the process. And they were using 40,000 square feet and saying that they needed more square footage, right?
Hmm.
So we gave out Lego sets to everybody the Legos, and it's 6 steps to making a saddle. Each team was assigned one of those steps and did a 7 ways on how to relay out that section. And the Lego sets were each peg was to an actual square foot, and opened up everything on the table. And that sort of also using that immersion, we had supervisors and line workers helped in both the training and the thinking and the buy-in because they were all part of it. And within a week later, completely changed around the factory, went from 40,000 square feet to 21,000 square feet. And our cycle time is now 6 to 10 days from the 21 to 40 days. And we took out 75 to 80% of the WIP over the following 4 to 8 weeks. And so it was that full immersion of you don't need to be threatened. Lean is not going, we're not going to take away any of your jobs. But this is the way we do business. This is Team Kaspar Business Systems, and jump on board. And we've had a full buy-in, and only one individual have we had to part ways with, going back to your other question, who didn't get, sort of fully on board, if you will. So
And all this happened how quickly after you closed the acquisition?
So the big Kaizen that I talked about was within 4 months. We were already doing smaller Kaizens
Yeah.
for that. And week one was when we met with day one actually was when we met with the leadership, and that within the first month we had our first session of 4-hour session of training on our Casper Business Systems. So
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, really quick. Is this the first acquisition that you guys have made?
This is the first one that wasn't absorbed by one of our other subsidiaries. So
Okay.
again, I described it as platforms, truck bed platform,
Yep.
precious metals platform, etc. This created a whole new platform.
Gotcha.
Done some other acquisitions that were bolt on to our other platforms that was kind of absorbed in. We may have kept a few employees here or there, but this is a whole new platform where we didn't have people to take over it. We were just going to train the team, as part of Casper.
Yep. This quick question regarding college graduate engineers. How long do your recent college graduate engineers typically stay with Casper, and how are you able to retain them?
Yeah. Well, it's early on the journey, right? So and we are very, so we recreated even our system as part of Casper's Business Systems levels. So it used to be, supervisors, line workers, managers, and instead we've created it. Other companies, we've copied other companies of basically a 10 tier, 1 through 3 is hourly, but then 4, 5, 6 is salary, and ways that you can move up. And so we work really hard with younger individuals. I'm interviewing an undergrad on Friday actually, and it's a high value undergrad, which is why I'm involved. But I recruited him. But showing a career path of what it looks like after 2 years, 4 years, and 10 years of what it could be if you're on this journey, right? And so
Yeah.
we've had, if they're willing to move to, and again, we have locations in Bryan College Station, which is not as rural, big university town. But if they're willing to locate to our area, and I love mentoring, or I love it, I love teaching to a younger generation. So despite all the things that I have going on my plate, I do make a point to engage with the younger employees. And so I can say our turnover rate's been really low. I mean, as I'm thinking through it, probably like over 80%. And again, we're probably 3 to 4 years into it. So, it's not like a huge sample size, but it's that intentionality. It goes back to intentionality. And again, I understand, 100,000 employee company may be a little different, but when I was on Wall Street, I had a CEO as a 22-year-old who was like, our CIO. What 22-year-old ever gets to interact with a CIO? But he made an intentional aspect to interact with, even though we were a $40 billion fund, to interact with several of us early 20-year-olds that he saw promise in, and he's a mentor of mine to this day, right? And so I try to pay that forward, and I think it pays in the return aspect, even though there is obviously some sacrifice for all the other things that I have to do.
That's great. Excellent. I feel like I could go another 2 or 3 hours with you, so we're gonna have to do this again. And I'm still waiting for my rematch invite to come down there and play
Yes,
basketball against your team. So
we'd love that. And I'd love to tell you more about Kaspar Business Systems and our playbook and all that stuff as well. So appreciate it, enjoyed it.
Great
Hopefully
seeing you.
everybody found it valuable.
Yeah, thank you. So before we bid farewell to Jason, I encourage you to take a moment and reflect on the valuable insights and practical advice that he shared with us today and how you can apply these lessons to your own organization and their lean journey. If you have any further questions or would like to explore the possibilities of initiating or enhancing your lean journey, or just getting started, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Lean Focus. We're here to support you every step of the way. Once again, thank you, Jason, for taking your time to share your journey with us, and are grateful for you to contribute in this interview series. And we hope to see all of you next month in another installment of Lean Catalyst. Thank you and have a great rest of your week. Bye now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.